Hey everybody, so let's talk about the Devastator. I had been theorycrafting a little bit about how I wanted to approach playing it in the end game. I think a lot of people have discussed how the aggressive play can often change in end game. Enemies become so difficult, it kind of becomes scary. So I've always been the barbarian Berserker type player. Very kinetic, chaotic, likes to be up in the mix, constantly moving forward, constantly pressuring. But in a lot of cases, even when you build a character like that, they generally will be one shot eventually. You're constantly between a position of surviving and moving forward, or that one specific thing happening that kills you. Characters, for instance, that have more armor debuffs, attacks that go through armor, you have to be very cognizant of those types of situations. Being able to constantly be up in the fight in the mix is very dangerous. However, I have really been impressed with the way they've created the health regen system and how cohesive it is with other classes. For instance, the Technomancer is a long distance fighter. You can pick and choose the people to kill that might be nearby your Devastator that's out in the mix just to focus on healing them, which is kind of a cool way of looking at it. And it should be pretty fun to be able to kind of control the battlefield. At the end of the day, being that close to the enemies, where they spawn, how they're coming out, who they're going after. Kev even noticed that a lot of times the boss was focusing on me and not him, so he was able to kind of just continue to battle. I don't know if that is innately part of the Devastator kit, but it was interesting to note. So we have a lot of battlefield control, where things are going, how things are moving, and if you play aggressively with a team that supports you, it should work out pretty well. I want to try and create a character that can withstand a large amount of punishment with support from the team that I'm playing with. So what is the build I was talking about? The one skill that I'm really looking to build around is Bolderdash. So this gets me in, it runs me through. It also has a lot of interesting debuff mechanics and things along those lines, especially when you get involved with the legendary set. There's a lot of interesting mods that kind of encompass this ability. Obviously, with the lowered cooldown, it makes it just an absolute beast of an ability when you talk about not just moving around the battlefield, but also being able to stay in the mix. So in a couple of the fights, obviously with the melee ones, it'd be nice to just run through them and start pushing towards the backline, especially if those melee mobs are going to continue to chase you. The other two skills I'm kind of up in the air about. If you look at Golem's Limb, you get an ability to create Golem, which is the protective suit of armor that Devastators can use after every kill. Now that's interesting, but I wonder if it would be more valuable for me to have an on-demand Golem. So I'm debating whether or not that would be my second slot. I also am thinking about Impale from a healing standpoint. So there's some healing mechanics around Impale where if you get the right mod, you can impale enemies and they create basically an aura of healing. It is stationary, and I don't see my character as staying in one particular place for any period of time. Reflect Bullets is obviously a panic button. If I feel like I'm going to die or I'm in a moment of crisis, I can throw up Reflect Bullets and just have a few seconds of relief. Now, some people might be saying, well, why not use Gravity Leap? Well, Gravity Leap is interesting. However, it takes me out of the fight. And if that causes enemies to turn on my teammates, I could have effectively killed them within the time that I'm up in the air. Now, obviously I can do it really fast, but still I think it removes even those split seconds, I think is problematic in those situations. And finally, another kind of panic button, but also a control mechanism is Endless Mass. So I could throw that down, kind of group everybody up and focus on getting in, maybe doing a Bolderdash through them or something along those lines. So it's kind of navigating that, but I know the linchpin here is really Bolderdash, and it has a lot to do with the fact that I'm focusing on the kinetic skills. I don't know if you noticed that. Between the tank and DPS line, there's a skill, Into the Fray. After every kinetic skill ends, you get 20% mitigation for 10 seconds. Now with Bolderdash, especially when you start looking at the cooldown off of the legendary set items, that is consistent uptime. So Into the Fray is kind of a linchpin for how that system works. Heirloom Armor is the 20% armor off a close range kill. So basically you gain 20% of the armor of the enemy that died within close range. There's also Stone Circle, which increases our close range radius by 4 meters, which effectively increases our heal diameter. and through the mob, which allows us to increase our armor by 7% of every mob within that radius. Unbroken Vow is your cheat death mechanic, so if you die, you get boosted back to 50% health. It has a 3-minute cooldown, which is pretty small. Overlord of the Battleground, 20% healing increase for everyone. Outrider Commander is 20% health and shield boost to team. And then of course, pick up the last skill in the tree, Mighty Tank, so that you can increase your firepower and anomaly by 10% of your armor. I will be picking up all the health and armor small nodes, so that I'll be stacking health and armor basically. I'm ignoring health regen because my objective is not to gain health passively, but to actually get kills and gain in that way. One other node that I would be picking up consistently is the resist nodes. So I'm looking at armor, health, and then resist last. That'll help kind of round out the other resist skills that are coming up in the build. So I just kind of wanted to break down the legendary armor for you guys too, so you can understand kind of where my mindset is at. Obviously, again, this is one armor of many that are available to the class, so I'm curious to see how those other work. But if this is the tank set, this is what I'll be going after. The mask reduces enemy resists by 50% when you Bolderdash them. So the chest doubles the armor after a dash. The legs have a reduce elite damage by 20%. The feet, 5% damage reduction per enemy, stacks up to 40%. Here's the Bolderdash part though. Damage by dash increases health by 307%, stacks up to 5 for 10 seconds. So every time I dash through somebody, I gain 307 health for 10 seconds, and I can stack that up 5 times. And then gloves, crits on elite, increase firepower by 192 for 8 seconds, and increase reflect bullet damage. Yeah, and that's pretty much it. I mean, it seems really feasible given the little bit of I've played. The game is hard. I mean, it's not a pushover by any means. Kev and I had some really good fights, and it just felt really right. Honestly, it reminded me a lot of when we used to play Gears of War cooperatively and competitively even. But I think this is a really good indication that this game has some solidity, and I'll talk about it more in, I'm sure, other videos, but the narrative has actually been very enjoyable as well. Obviously, this is just the first section. It's probably more fleshed out than most because they spent a lot of time at the beginning, but if they continued that level of writing throughout the entire game, I'm really excited to see where this goes. So stay conscious. Talk to you later.